Hello again, everybody. I'm Dean O'Neill.
I'm Nick Robinson.
And I'm Will Speaker.
Gentlemen, we were flying through Acts, and it's every one of our subject matter on Acts has been really interesting, and I don't doubt that this one will not be.
Yeah, and I want to keep just emphasizing that as we read this, to keep thinking about, like, okay, this is the early church. This is how it's being formed. This is how it's being founded. These are the things that they are facing as a group, and to keep placing ourselves in that first century Jewish Christian context, and like, what do we think's going on? How would it feel like to be there? Like, thousands of years later, we already know how it turns out. Mm-hmm. We already know the results of this, and the new conflicts that would arise because of this, and the disagreements that we have today. But to keep thinking about what it would feel like to be in a fresh new movement, right, having to make these decisions from the start.
Yeah, like I said, I think I've been saying a couple times here. This is a history lesson of firsts.
Yeah,
this is the first time this has happened. This is the first time this has happened. It's pretty cool.
And so here we see a conflict.
Yep.
I don't know if it's the first conflict in the church, but it is a notable conflict. Will, what are the battle lines in this conflict?
So the battle lines are the Greek-speaking disciples accused the Aramaic-speaking disciples because their widows were being overlooked in the daily food service.
Yeah, so there's a language barrier.
Yep.
We got the Greek-speaking and the Aramaic-speaking, probably a culture barrier there too. And one group says, man, it seems like that other group's getting special treatment. Mm-hmm. And the other group's saying, that's not right. That's not fair. We need to do something about that. So they're going to speak up in their place of need that something needs to change. Mm-hmm. What do they change here, Will?
So they actually bring it to the attention of the 12 disciples.
Yeah, so they go to the source of authority.
Yep. And after the source of authority, they meet. The source of authority tells them, hey, give us 7 wise or well-respected men from your 2 groups, mm-hmm, in total, and we will appoint them to represent you or make these decisions for you.
Yeah, so because the 12 are like, man, we can't neglect our job. Mm-hmm. We have this important job of spreading the gospel, and the church is brand new. Yeah, there's thousands of people, but there's millions more, yep, to convert and to do this job, and they have 12 people to do that job, and so it's a big deal that they have it. And like, we can't neglect this responsibility to make sure that this other thing is happening. But to use current day language, they need someone to own this task.
Yeah,
because it's obviously not getting taken care of with nobody owning it, and so there needs to be more than one person. There needs to be some kind of representation here. Diversity of skills coming in to help people make sure that this job gets taken care of. And a lot of people will look back. If you go to a church or have been part of a church that has like an elder board and a deacon board, these are the deacons. These people are, you might say, they're ordained even or commissioned to acts of service. In the United Methodist Church, we have a dual ordination process or 2 paths. You can be ordained elder or deacon. An elder is what I am, leader of a church. A deacon, you're ordained to word and service and some other things. But you're this emphasis on serving people or in sometimes a special called place. Like I'm a nurse who is also called to serve God. And so I'm a deacon and I'm bringing my faith to my nursing. Or I'm a teacher also called to serve God. So I'm a deacon as a teacher. You see a lot of deacons as counselors or chaplains in places. So people say, okay, this is where all of that originates. I think there's at least 2 things here to look at. One is the role of conflict in the church, and 2, who the people that are selected are. There's like one attribute that I'm especially concerned with myself as we look at the attributes of people who are selected to serve. Let's talk about the second one first.
Okay.
In this list, there's someone who is elected to service who is a convert to Judaism. Mm-hmm. And before we recorded this, we're talking about, okay, so what does that mean? So here, all of the people who are in Acts right now still consider themselves Jewish.
Right.
They're on an alternative path of Judaism, but the name Christian hasn't been used yet. They obviously have their own structure because they're electing their own leaders. They're having their own councils to decide certain kinds of things, but they consider themselves to still be Jewish people. So this convert has converted to Judaism, just like everyone else there is Jewish, but has come from the outside in. And this outsider is elected in as to one of the people of this role. And so what kind of gifts or challenges do we experience when outsiders, however you want to understand that word, step into leadership in movements or organizations?
I'll start, Will. When you teach me about what is going on in Acts 6, we're in Acts 6, right? So you're teaching us, or you're teaching me for sure. Here's the first thing that I get is that, like you just said, all of these people that are in the church are elected. They're chosen by other people. All right. Well, they can be chosen to leave as well. I mean, you can, if you're gonna. That's why
you can get demoted. Is that what you're saying? Like you can lose your appointment as deacon, and you can be demoted to.
I think that what I'm saying is if you have an election to have these people in, then you elect to have them in. If you have another election at the end of one term, if there's a term limit of whatever, and I'm not talking politics here, I'm just saying if you are committing to 3 years of this, then at the end,
and different places elections will mean different things. Sometimes there will be a term, or it could be like Pope until you die. You're elected as right. It's like a lifetime election.
And so at the end of your time, if you want to be reelected, you can be reelected. Somebody might come in and they might elect them. My point is these are all choices of other people. You know what I'm saying? Now the difference is this: you get some churches, I believe, this is Dean's belief, you get some churches that will hire like an executive director. The pastor, you've talked about these churches before because you remember you said you went to a church that you never even met the pastor, or you never even
three times. I talked to him 3 times.
Yeah, talked to him 3 times. So they get big, and so that pastor and or board hire a executive director. That's a hire. That's totally different than election and asking people to serve because and as you all know, I'm against executive directors in churches, but
my stance is not as strong as yours.
Yeah. So, but then again, yes, you're that's my point. Is these people can be elected out just as quick as they can be elected in. So
yeah. Well, one of them is going to be murdered out,
right,
and not very long at all because they're going to be asked to pay. They've counted the cost, and the cost is going to be everything for them.
Right.
What else do outsiders bring to us? So Dean's talking about election, but also this idea of hiring an outsider could be detrimental.
Right.
What else do outsiders bring to us?
A new perspective. Like we can be we talk about institutions, or we talk about how structured things are set up. Sometimes we get in our own little box, our own little, talk to some people and they well, this is what's going on with my company. And they say, well, that's not their way. That's not when they're trying to think of new ideas or something. And they're like, well, I've been put in this position to see something else come through or do this. And this is the best way possible that we could do this. So the outsiders can really bring new life, and still hold to the core mission of the way that they're going about doing stuff.
Yeah, the mission and the method are different.
Yeah,
and so an outsider might be able to hold to the mission really well and might bring in a new method for holding to that mission.
Yes,
right.
Outsiders bring those fresh perspectives, especially when you think about this conflict here. This is a conflict that's embedded in this people group because there's some kind of ethnic language difference here.
Right.
And when that conflict is along those kind of lines, as you elect or choose leaders from you only have those 2 people group to choose from.
Right.
And so those same battle lines might end up being in your leadership area that were present in the conflict lower down. So to bring an outsider in who may have different allegiances, I don't know. I don't know if this outsider spoke Aramaic or Greek or both or nothing.
Sure.
I don't know. But you can imagine a situation where the outsider comes in and these entrenched battle lines don't mean much to them.
Yeah, and I'd like to think it's six. So 3 from the Aramaic speaking, and 3 from the Greek, and this outsider's in there.
It's the tiebreaker.
So yeah, so that's how I think it's set up, and actually it works to the best of all, like in that situation, because you can maybe be a peacemaker as that outsider, that 7
Blessed
person.
are the peacemakers.
Yeah.
And let me say this too, and I'm not trying to start anything, so don't think I am.
You always say that.
If you guys are talking the word outsider, then the total opposite is an insider. So you can't have an outsider unless you have an insider. And so those insiders, you're entrenching on their territory, and they've got to get used to you. I'm not saying they're being mean to you. I'm just saying someday the outsider has to become an insider.
Yeah, I mean, I look at it this too. Like we talk about what are the benefits, or what are some maybe even a stumbling block of having the quote unquote outsider in. I think it also brings in not just new ways of doing stuff, but new connections to
Absolutely.
other people's, other communities, and shows that we can be insiders, but be also somewhat outsiders are different. Like where we don't, we can be transformed not by maybe our full where we came from, but we can all be transformed by the power of God.
Sure. And I want to interject one thing. If you guys want to go to theconversation.org, we have a great interview with Debbie Tyke, who is Art of Invitation, and the whole premise of Art of Invitation is insiders and outsiders. So you can go and check that out.
Yeah, and like outsiders also, like you need like a fresh supply of outsiders, because outsiders
Right.
do become insiders over time. And so to have that perspective, to have those new connections, to have those challenges, to have people who are thinking in different ways is just is a big asset to a movement, so that the movement doesn't get stale, doesn't fail, doesn't become inward looking. Also, movements eventually have to hand off authority to other people.
Yeah.
If nothing else, you can think of it in generational terms. Some of us, we're not here forever, and so we at some point either we're going to retire from our job, we're going to move on to a new job, or we are going to die outside, like away from our job. So we have to have, no matter what, we're going to have outsiders that we're going to handing authority and leadership to, at least in some sense of that word, outsider. Right. And all of this, though, comes out of a place of conflict. And I want to suggest that healthy conflict can be healthy, can produce positive outcomes. So here, people have noticed a real injustice that is happening, and they go to the leaders to say, we got to do something about this. A real need is being missed. And there's a process that they go through, whether it's an embedded like a prescribed process that they all knew, or if they're just inventing it on the fly. They go through some kind of process to meet this need. Like that might not sound like conflict because no one's cussing somebody out here, but something bad is happening. They address it and presumably solve it to some degree.
Yes.
Or at least create a new structure for dealing with new problems as they arise. They've given people ownership over this part of the ministry. So I think that's why churches have to not be afraid of conflict. We have to say, okay, change is going to bring conflict. Conflict is going to bring change. And we can't, because oftentimes we avoid conflict by being like what we talked about yesterday, pretenders.
Yeah.
Sure.
We pretend that everything is okay.
Sweep it on the rug.
And that didn't work well for the people yesterday. And it doesn't work well for us.
Yep.
So that doesn't mean we need to be fighting all the time. It doesn't mean that all, no holds barred kind of fighting either.
Yeah.
Sure.
And because conflict and fighting are different things.
Yes, and I like to look at it as challenge and not conflict, because if you look at it from a way of challenging and you're bringing outsider opinions or different opinions, conflict, you can take hold of it, and like you said, it becomes more fighting. Challenging others to really soak in and think differently, or to approach something differently, I think brings more, can also bring out more grace in the conflict that we have.
I like what Will says. It is challenging because from the corporate world, they would call it an opportunity. and opportunity. To me, it's still another challenge. It's still another conflict that you're going to have to deal with. But there's ways to deal with it in a healthy way.
Mm-hmm. And I think we can say here in Acts chapter 6, they solve it in a healthy way.
Yeah.
Right. Set a good example
Right.
for us. Why don't we close in prayer today? God, we pray for all of this. One, that we would embrace outsiders. I don't know how to pray with that in quotes, but people who might look different, sound different, behave different, speak differently than us, have different life experiences than us, that we would embrace them. And as they are called, recognize their call into ministry and to leadership in the church, in our lives, in places all around us. Help us to recognize the gifts and to embrace the challenges that come with outsiders and insiders intermingling. We also pray that you would help us to practice healthy conflict, of noticing things that need to change, of being able to speak up and being part of the solution, understanding those in leadership, understanding those who are suffering, understanding those who are in the middle, maybe trying to mediate the outcome. God, help us to always be working for your good and for the good of your children. We ask all this in Jesus' name. Amen.
For Nick Robinson and Will Speaker, I'm Dean O'Neill, and you've been listening to The Daily Path.